I've got some questions. When this came up last week, I guess it seemed as if nobody had any idea this had happened to you before. Molly, you weren't here. Well, you remember Sea Winds.
I'm sorry?
You remember Sea Winds. Of course. Yeah, thank you. I was beginning to think I was crazy that nobody remembered it. So we've had some experience with this and I don't think this town wants to go that route again. And I'm not clear on what our alternatives are.
So your
Well,
alternatives are you could adopt it and put a 1% limit in place. And you could not adopt it and not have any limit in place in terms of projects being applied for development that are from for-profit developers for affordable housing. What really, this might help. So what happened was the legislature, when it enacted the comprehensive permit statute, which streamlined the process for affordable housing projects, found that some municipalities had a problem in that they were inundated. And it was too much coming at them all at once. And this 1% limitation is the legislature's answer to that, to slow things down and put a limit on the number of projects for the municipality to handle.
Can I ask a follow-on to that? Do you mind?
I guess my only question is why would anybody not?
I think it's a good question because it's part of what I'm curious about is, okay, let's say Tristan and Keith Housing LLC decides that they want to build a 25 unit affordable project. They could still come to the town and say, he and I could come to the town and say, we have a great idea to build. We're private developers. It only makes sense to do it at 25 units. It's not foreclosed. Is that right? Does it foreclose a proposal that
It
would exceed?
It would if you're above that 7 units. So if more than 7 units are proposed in, say, a year, that 8th unit or that 10th unit would be beyond your limitation.
Right. Okay.
So excuse me, where does this leave us, let's say with the proposed 16 unit development that the housing board is working on over by Paul O'Brien?
That's a nonprofit.
So it's, oh, right. So nonprofit. Okay. Sorry.
That's a
Never
really
mind.
important distinction that I keep forgetting, Bill.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you adopt the more conservative route, and then can that be changed
Next question. Yep.
down the line?
Yes.
You have reason to.
Yes.
Yes, you can not adopt this and then adopt it later. That's an option as well.
But we
And
could
when you
do
say,
the,
Karen, we're talking about the 1%. The town does need to adopt the ordinance, the comprehensive.
right.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
permit
we're just
ordinance.
talking about, yes,
Yes.
my comments are just limited to this one.
But to
one
Bill's
change.
question is a sort of is a good one. If Tristan and Keith Housing LLC said, "Boy, we could do a 20 unit one. We're going to go talk to the town council and see whether they'll change that percentage." We still have the flexibility to do that if we decided to.
No,
In the future, we couldn't change the ordinance?
you can change your ordinance, but
Yeah.
if you have a 1% limit in there annually, that project would have to wait till the next year, or this is either an in or an out.
Or the town could change the ordinance at some point if it decided that this were a better way to develop affordable housing.
Yes, but the change would be limited to taking the language out or putting it in. There is no change. to the
Right.
actual
No,
text.
yep, I understand. I
Yes.
understand. I follow that. Yep.
And the likelihood in most years, the town is not meeting that 20% affordable units being approved through a calendar year. So it may not apply,
Sure. Good point.
the likelihood. The reason is each year we had, when the Block Island Housing Board had a large project that was approved, that, put us over the 20%, but in most years, unlikely. So unless there's an affordable housing project that happens that same calendar year.
I'm comfortable being conservative and knowing that we have the flexibility if we want to remove that language if it comes to that.
And I will say most communities are including it just so it's the option is there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, do you want to move on? I assume we're going to do this as one motion. So do you want to move on to the other one, Karen? Unless there are
Yeah,
any
so-
other questions. Go ahead.
Okay, I didn't know if there was any other questions. So
Nope.
on the second policy question, which we touched on briefly at the last meeting, there are minimum density bonuses that the town has to give, but you can raise them. Now, there are several listed in the draft. Again, all state mandated, but state law says they are a minimum. So, what this is doing, just as for a little context, is these density bonuses, as enacted by the council, will guide the planning board when they are considering an application. It'll provide some direction to the board or the permitting authority when the proposed project is consistent with local needs and when it's not. So by you setting a minimum, it kind of gives that guidance to the planning board and they can better review the project. Now, as to what you have to decide, in talking with Allison, we looked at all of the listed draft bonuses. The idea here is that items A through C are density bonuses that would be awarded to projects that are in areas that are already connected to public water and sewer. So what does that mean? It means that typically when you have property that's already connected, it's usually in the more dense areas. So in speaking with Allison, and I'm sure she'll chime in if I'm off on this, the minimums that are provided in the state law are pretty substantial. And given, you know, the town's vigilance to resources like water and space, especially in your summer months, I'm not sure it makes sense to increase the density bonuses that you would give for projects that are already in your more dense areas. That's items A through C. Starting with D, D through F are for projects on property that is not currently connected to water or sewer, but that could show an availability and connections is reasonable. For D through F, that is a true policy question. And that comes down to the council's appetite for incentivizing affordable projects, affordable housing projects in areas that are less dense now. And that's not something that really is quantifiable in, you know, statistics or anything. That's really a feel for the council, depending on what you would like to incentivize, if anything. You are not obligated to raise the minimums that are in the draft, but you can. The minimums that are in the draft now, if you read them carefully, show a staggered increasing bonus structure, really. And the greatest incentive or density bonus goes to developments that have 100% low and moderate income housing being proposed. And again, as minimums, that means that you can raise them.
Just bear with me, Karen. These would be for projects that are proposed, as opposed to, for example, density bonus for the development of a 513, which I think this council has demonstrated when it passed an ordinance this summer, we support that. So do I have that right?
Yeah, if you're doing an individual 513, this would not apply.
Okay. So I just want to make clear that we wouldn't be, by taking the conservative approach here, wouldn't be limiting one of what I consider to be one of the real legs of the stool on affordable housing, which is 513s.
No, it wouldn't impact that. You're already
Thank you.
granting that in a separate ordinance. Yeah, this comprehensive permit ordinance applies to deed restricted housing.
Because 513s
Yeah.
aren't specifically low or moderate,
No.
right?
I
But
merely-
even if they were,
It's-
People
you're already
they
giving
wouldn't be
them the,
going through the comprehensive permit process.
My
This
experience,
ordinance is just for that
yes,
process.
I get that. My experience has been, I know this will come as a shock to everybody in the room, that people only listen to bits and pieces of these meetings. And I don't want to get a call saying, why did you guys limit, 513s, or why did you limit this one? So I just wanted to reiterate that it was really more of a, I suppose, an exercise than a real question. I feel the same way about this one. I think taking the conservative approach of 3 units per acre is what makes sense. Ordinances are living, breathing, and if we need to, we can change that. Any thoughts about this? And
Statement says it all.
and
I
those
think
were,
that's the safe way to go. I think most communities are not offering greater density for comprehensive permits. So I would say, given the current, zoning, the lot sizes you have, what the minimum is, probably makes sense to not offer additional density.
wonderful. So, can I make a motion that can we make a motion that this would be as drafted, Millie? Because we have the 1% in the draft and the 3 unit density bonus in here.
And as I understand it.
Yeah.
So as I understand it, Karen, the document that we have in front of us does include the two items just discussed that the council wants to adopt. Is that correct?
That is correct. So in order to finalize, you would just need to delete the comments in the margin, and then you are good to go.
Great. So if people are comfortable, I would, motion would be in order to approve these amendments to the zoning ordinance, Article 7, permits, procedures, and enforcement, Section 712, comprehensive permits for low and moderate income housing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Karen and Allison, thank you so much for your work on this. This was, among the ones that we've done, at least for me, was the most confusing. And I really appreciate your taking the time to really walk us through this tonight.
My pleasure,
Thank you.
anytime.
Do I have to adjourn this public hearing? Yes, I guess I do. Can I have a motion to adjourn this public hearing? Second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 8, honor second warden Martha Ball. No, but we insisted on doing it. I have a draft resolution that I will read so that it's part of the record. But I did want to say, for me, before I get to that, and I'm sure others would like to say things. I have really enjoyed serving with you, even when we disagree, because you have something that I think is in really short supply in our culture, and that is an ability to disagree and still be friends. And being your friend becoming your friend has been one of the real joys of serving on this council for me, Martha. I've learned a lot from you, but the great thing is that sometimes in this process you end up with new friends. Yeah, of course I do.
You do have a question.
So this resolution of the town of New Shoreham is in appreciation of Martha Ball's 50 years of service to the town of New Shoreham. Whereas Martha Ball has been involved in the governance of the town of New Shoreham for over 50 years, covering a broad range of roles starting in the early 1980s. And whereas Martha Ball has served on the town council for 21 years in total, during two major periods from 1991 to 2004 and 2016 to 2024, and as first warden from 2001 to 2004. And whereas Martha Ball started in the finance department in 1978 and was town treasurer from 1981 to 1990. And whereas Martha Ball was on the zoning board from 1980 to 1992, that's why we always loved each other, Martha, and was chair until 1991. And whereas Ms. Ball was clerk and deeply engaged in the sewer plant construction and operations from 1976 till 2000. And whereas Martha Ball has also served on the Historic District Commission, Conservation Committee, Hodge Acquisition Team, Iowa Light and Power, the Tourism Council, Washington County Regional Planning Council, the Water District, Ball O'Brien Planning and Management Committee, the 250th Anniversary Committee, Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire, the Density Discussion Panel, Fire Police Station Trustees, Housing Board, Planning Board as a Town Council rep, and as Assistant Moderator. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of New Shoreham Town Council sincerely thanks Martha Ball for her long-term participation, perspective, and true commitment to the well-being of Block Island and the Town of New Shoreham. And be it further resolved that we decree that this resolution be made part of the permanent record of the town. Witness our hands and seal on this, what's today? This 18th of November, 2024. Any discussion of that resolution?
Thank you all. It has been my pleasure most of the time. It that's kind of a list of things some of which I don't even remember because they were so long ago. My gosh.
People who served with you.
I'm sure they do. But I think that it speaks to something Molly was talking about a little while ago, that getting involved here is something that hasn't I guess you spoke well to it, Tristan. I didn't have to go to Candidates Day, so I didn't go. It should be, it's not just a task, it's not just a chore. There should be some element of working together, working well together. I was talking to a guy several years ago, and he was talking about a term that we'd had quite a while before that, and said, you know, we got things done and we had fun. And there's no reason on God's green earth why getting things done, working for the better of the community and having fun should be mutually exclusive. Those are the things you really ought to be able to have. And you've got a great staff now. We've always had a great staff. We've been really fortunate with that. And I will, I'm staying on Historic District though, so I hope to stay on the Historic District.
Well,
Yes.
there's so many overwhelming number of applications.
But thank you all very much. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Tristan. Thank you, Molly.
Can I have a second on the resolution? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Anybody?
Can we go,
anything else?
can we go home now?
Yeah.
I wanted to say, I think you might have forgotten the Democratic Town Committee
Oh.
that Martha's on as well.
We left a lot of things off.
I know. It's important, well, it's important to say,
Town stuff.
that you should know, and I should have mentioned this, beginning, Sven Riesem, really played an important role in
I know.
this. And, was very helpful,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Sven called me and started with, "Don't hate me."
Yeah, right, I know, right, absolutely.
And I will never hate you, Sven.
Now on to other news. Discuss an act to award APRA funded community mini grants. Amy, I don't know if you're going to be the point person on this, walking us through this, but I will say, reading this really brought a smile to my face. And bye, Michelle's. Good to see you guys.
Thank you all.
And, I was thinking, Molly, when I was looking at this, if you hadn't been grumpy last winter, we wouldn't be in this place. So thank you. I mean that in the most loving way. I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge that. So go ahead, Aim.
Sure. We did have a tremendous response, which is so exciting. We had a total of 53 applications totaling nearly $100,000. Of course, we only have 32,198 to award, but I would say all of them were fantastic, and we had a lot of really fun ideas and crossed a lot of different types of activities. So on the back of that memo, you can see a recommendation to award 23 individual grants totaling the 32,198. One of the things that we didn't get done for tonight's presentation is putting all of these on a calendar so that the community can be aware of them, know and keep track of when registrations will be released. But we're going to continue to communicate outward so that people can participate. Some of them, of course, do have registration needs because there are limited capacities, but overall, very exciting. Keith, you mentioned Molly's participation. She was a key part of this in screening the applications along with Dave Sniffen, the rec director, and Allison Carley, the human services director, and of course, Charlene's help always in the background.
Yeah.
Molly, anything you want to add?
I think we had really fantastic applications.
Yeah.
And like Amy said, totaling more than 3 times the amount that we had to offer. So it was a little tricky to narrow it down, but I think we have some terrific offerings, and I hope everybody will sign up for something and get out of the house this winter.
In terms of communication outwards, we will be reaching out to all participants tomorrow, both those who are awarded and those who are not, just so that people can know what the timing will be.
This is really great stuff.
It is.
It's the kind of stuff that makes you smile and be happy about the community that we have. It's really great. So thank you all for your work.
And just a reminder on one of the criteria that we set forth is that people running these programs will need to submit a report afterwards about what kind of participation they had, what worked, what didn't, what they might do differently in the future, so that we can use that as a learning opportunity for which programming may be good to continue going forward. So.
Yeah, and where there's demand that couldn't be accommodated in the space, and all kinds of
Even things that didn't work, which is,
Right.
okay.
that's part of it too.
So.
Do you need a motion from the council to make
Yes.
this award?
Please.
Can someone?
Yes, I'll make the motion to award the $32,198 to the mini grant.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Right?
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you so much, guys. Really, that's wonderful stuff. All right, you've reached the exciting part of our evening tonight. We're going to discuss the adoption of New Shoreham's Written Information Security Program.
So I'm really excited about this. But I promise to make it quick. This is the first of a number of technology policies that will come before the council. This one in particular, the Written Information Security Plan, or the WISP, defines how we handle personally identifiable information, both electronic and in hard copy. It is required by Rhode Island general law, which is why we're starting with this one. And we're doing this in conjunction with the relaunching of both cybersecurity training, which we had lapsed and is part of the requirements of the plan, and also a more robust email security set of protocols, including encrypting confidential information and things like that. So as end users, the council in particular will see some of those changes coming through in the next few weeks.
Gotcha.
But yeah, at the beginning of a number of technology policies.
You know, I was curious when I was reading this, just literally just curious. Is the trust involved in this at all? Because I would think from an insurance company perspective.
It is a requirement of the trust
is,
that we have this in place, and they provide some additional guidance in framing it. Yeah.
Terrific. Great. Do you need us to have a motion to adopt this?
I do.
I did
please.
not have any questions. Did anybody on the council have any questions? It was a helpful document, though.
I guess the only one would be, is there going to be any additional costs with the IT consultant?
So there won't be additional consulting costs from the IT. Some of them do have a cost to them, such as the encryption of email. So there are additional software costs that are required. And I think we'll find that in a number of the things that we need to upgrade, we will be able to absorb those in our technology budget. So it's not a consulting cost per se, but sometimes the actions we need to take do have a cost.
So like you'd have
Thank
to buy a license for an encrypted
Exactly.
email program.
Yep.
Gotcha. Terrific.
Motion to approve the security
Is there
plan.
a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Update on homestead tax exemption. Is this Mona or Amy?
I'm going to take this one.
Okay.
And this is more of a verbal update.
Yes.
It's become clear that in order to implement the next steps that we've been discussing with regard to the homestead exemption, which is really a shift away from homestead exemption and into residential and non-residential tax rate, that we do need to go back to the legislature for additional authorization. And Nick can weigh in here if he wants, but that's the short version. Which means almost by definition, it would not take effect for next tax year.
Gotcha.
Because of the timing of that
Yeah.
process. So that's one important thing for all of us to recognize. And then two, to talk about whether we want to continue to push forward. And that would probably look like raising it when we meet with the lobbyists in December for them to be bringing that legislation forward for us next session or this session.
Great. Thank you.
I guess just in general, should we continue to draft that language along those lines, or?
Well, for me, yes. I don't know about others, and I don't know about
About
the
the new-
incoming
yep.
council. So I don't want to bind anybody to anything, but yes, I mean, we started this, whatever now, 3 or 4 years ago, with the idea that this was going to be a multi-step approach over a period of years, to get to a place where we had a sounder, more rational, fairer property tax system. So yeah, I think it's part and parcel.
So I think at a minimum, we would include it in the agenda for that meeting with the
Oh,
lobbyists
yes.
and get
I
the
think so.
temperature of the council
Yes.
at that time.
Yes,
Okay.
I would think.
Right. So basically, we're just looking for a motion for continuance for the incoming.
Not
council to
even-
Revisit this?
Not even a motion, just
Yes.
wanted to let the council know what the
Okay.
next steps are. And we've sort of reached the end of the line for what we can do locally.
Great. Item 12, receive an act on recommendation to award a contract for a 2025 roadway improvement project to JH Lynch and Sons.
So you do have a memo there from Jim Jeremia
Yes.
recommending the award. The only thing that I would add to that is that you see the 4 projects identified. Snake Hole Road, the intersection of Pilot Hill and Mohegan Trail, reconstruction of Beacon Hill, and then reconstruction of Connecticut Ave. In the application process and the memorandum of understanding that the town and DOT executed previously, there were 2 other projects that were identified, Gracie's Cove and Heinz Field Road. Those have been removed from these projects because of the funding. So we can only do so many projects. Those 2 have come out. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
I know someone who's interested in Beacon Hill Road. And my understanding is that it's the two hills, right?
That is my understanding, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to come and grade it after every rainstorm.
Exactly, exactly. Yes.
Terrific. Thank you. What's that?
I was speaking.
Oh, well, I think it's perfect.
I was just really-
Our cars don't. It is, my observation, which is only my observation, is that probably on a per 100 yard, per 100 yards, probably more money gets spent on Beacon Hill Road than any other road in town.
Time and money and effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, the good thing, if you talk to Joe Prokarka about it, you can predict the weather in the summertime based upon when he comes and grades, because you know it's going to rain hard that night. All right, can I have a motion to award this contract to J.H. Lynch and Sons for $1,352,470?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. I would mention, when you're talking to Jim, this was a terrific, I thought it was really well done. So it eliminated for me a lot of questions, you know, because you could just refer to the document. So please, when you see him or if you did it, I just wanted to say thank you. Review of financial reports.
How are you?
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so just want to talk about revenue first. As far as usually one of our biggest revenue items is our building permits, and they're not as high as they were last year. Not alarming, as we know their predictability and all the other variables, timing. That's not an abnormal thing for that revenue source. The good news is this is our first month on the financials reflecting the short-term rentals. And for October, we brought in $20,400. So that's nice to see there. Additional revenue would be the harbor's revenue. I'm seeing several of their revenue lines are up, most substantial being the mooring permits. In addition, we got the waitlist fees and the electrical, the wharfage, also tracking ahead of last year's numbers. If we are looking at state aid, the hotel and meal tax that is reflected here is what was collected for August. And the meals tax tracked with last year, pretty close. The hotel tax, however, was down by about 20%. And what was interesting to me is that the cottage tax revenue collected for August had increased by 50% compared to the prior year. So
Interesting.
take-
What do you think that is?
it could be just a change in the type
Type of
that are
people.
more
Yeah.
families coming out.
Yeah.
Could be.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought so.
You
'Cause
said,
that's-
did you say it was up by 50%?
The cottage tax was compared, when I looked at August, yeah, compared to last year, the cottage tax was up by 50%. But the cottage tax is more than just a weekly rental, right? It also,
Right. It's also room resellers, which are sort of the hosting platforms like Expedia or Airbnb.
Interesting.
We've always had, it's much less predictable than the hotel tax, which is a pretty fixed population. And so I would say we don't have a great handle on why and when those variations in the cottage tax come through.
So that would be like Airbnb, Expedia, VRBO.
Any of those
Okay.
room resellers.
So it could be hotel rooms booked on
Right,
Airbnb
exactly.
and VRBO are coming through on the cottage tax, which would account
Right.
for why that was down by 20%.
They still should be, Department of Revenue should be separating those. And I think that is something that Jess is probably investigating because their revenue is driven by the hotel tax. And so I have a feeling she will get to the bottom of whether that is part of the problem. which it very well may be. But,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Interesting. Bill, did you have a question? I thought I saw
So
your
you're
hand.
saying it might be time of booking when it's paid as opposed to actual stay? Is it a possibility?
Again, yes, with the cottage tax, there's not, the rules around when you collect and when you remit are much less firm than on the hotel tax. So you can't tie it in the same way to timing.
So the indicator would be on when you look at it at the end of the year, how much you brought in.
Across the whole year, yes.
That's interesting.
As far as on the expense side, really the only thing that to me was reportable or looked more like a variance would be the administration line for the expenses. And that would just be a result of the town manager's severance package. Other than that, expenses seemed as expected compared to last year. Nothing shocking that we haven't already discussed in.
Terrific. Thank you, Mona.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you, Mona. That was
Thank
terrific.
you.
Amy, did you have something that you needed to raise?
I don't think so.
I just had a text from Nick Solitro that you had something on the consent calendar that needed to be addressed.
Oh, wait, we're good with that.
You're good.
There's
Okay.
one minor typo, but I can handle that administratively. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
Just, we're like, it's.
I don't know. What do I need to?
Thanks, Keith. Just making sure everybody is on the same
Oh,
page. here.
terrific.
Thank you.
Now your report, please, Amy.
Sure. Again, just to give you the highlights, obviously we had an election. The clerk's office and the canvassers did an exceptional job, as they always do. That voter participation rate at 74% is phenomenal. So that's always really exciting. And yeah, just the work that went into that, I don't think is always
Yes.
visible to the outside. So congratulations to all of them in a job well done. Human Services, the coordinator of healthy aging has obviously been on board now for a little bit and getting a great start to things. One of her first projects was Lunch Bunch and resuming that. And my understanding is they had a great turnout for their first Lunch Bunch back, if you will, and they were joined by the 4th grade, which was a lot of fun. Harbors, Mona mentioned actually both mooring permits and waitlist fees. A reminder to everyone that mooring permits are due by December 15th and that waitlist fees must be paid by December 31st. And my understanding is the harbor master has a very low tolerance for tardy payments. And so I encourage everyone to
Judging
get
by
those
the tone of her emails, I think you're correct.
in. The vessel that was aground was pulled off over the weekend without incident. So great work both to Kate and to Phil who assisted her with that. So- I'm sorry? I don't know the name of the vessel, but it just came off. It came off on Sunday morning.
The only reason I asked, there are, boats will surface on, I hate to say this out loud, Facebook, and it seems like everything's taken care of, and then a couple of weeks later, somebody else finds it, sees it. And that's the only reason I asked. Because I know there was one that people couldn't seem to get through their heads had been taken care of.
The other thing under harbors, I believe the council will receive this officially as correspondence in December probably, but we have gotten notification from CRMC that the harbor management plan has been approved.
Just in time to start a new one.
Again, we'll talk about that in December in a more formal way,
Yeah.
but that's
Wonderful.
huge, fantastic news.
Yes.
So that's great. In the recreation department, both vans have been picked up from RIPTA. We have one in the parking lot here on island and available for use. The other is on the mainland and used primarily by the recreation department and by the school.
How's that going?
It's going really well. So Dave Sniffen, as rec director, is the person in charge. So he has custody and control of both vehicles. And they've been coordinating over the years anyway for the vehicles we did have. It's not a big change in policy. He does say they're easier to drive than they look, but they're actually pretty comfortable, which is great news. And I think it's going well so far.
I think no one will listen or care, but that was really a significant effort on Mary Ann's behalf.
It
and I
absolutely
think It's
was.
really important to, she's not here, but to thank her for that.
She made that happen
Yeah.
entirely. Yeah. That's great. The library is working through some of their capital issues, particularly the elevator and then some mold remediation. The good news is they're making progress on both, which is great news. In land use, short-term rentals continue. I think even now these numbers are a little outdated. I think we're in the 265 range for applications received. Libra planners will join the planning board in December, so they're excited about that. And then sort of in the middle of the bottom, just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that the generator at Health Services had a full failure during the power outage and has not come back. We are in the process of securing a temporary replacement because the new generator is expected to be delivered in December anyway. So
Oh, so this is the new one.
this wasn't the new one. This was the old one.
Kidding me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have been more clear. The old one has failed. The new one is on its way, and we have a temporary
gotcha.
being installed to bridge the gap.
Gotcha.
So the one that had the full failure had a plan to be moved somewhere else. Will it be rehabbed or is this it?
We generally agree at this point that it's not going to be worth the cost of investing in it to make that happen. So I think
Okay.
we will dispose of it at the end. Especially given our experience with the generator at the school. I don't think that's a move anybody wants to make right now. But I'm happy to take questions on anything else that people may have.
I have one. Has the fire department finalized the company that they're looking at for this portable pump?
They have not finalized it. They are finalizing their specifications and making sure that they can meet all the procurement requirements. But
So
we
we
have,
don't know the manufacturer yet?
we have not put in the order yet. I know they're soliciting quotes.
Okay.
Is that something you want to have come back to the council or?
I'm just wondering if the material that the chief presented, if the town is still looking at that particular company.
I believe that they are.
Right, so I guess one thing with that being that company is just into the fire apparatus field in 2023, which I believe I would ask that we have an engineer look at it.
Sure. And
Just to make sure, because usually when we buy a fire apparatus, it fits an NFPA component. So I'm wondering if this piece of equipment will.
I believe part of their commitment
Yeah.
when they put those specifications together was to have each component NFPA certified,
Okay.
even though that may not be part of their standard manufacturing process. They were
Right.
going to bring in a third party, but I'll confirm that.
All right, that's great. Thank you.
I just have one comment, Amy. I think I don't know whether this is your first or second report, but to say that you hit the ground running, I think would be the understatement of the year. And just really appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Discuss and act on board commission committees. So we have to acknowledge the resignation of Maria Mott from the Conservation Commission and thank her for her service. As Molly indicated before, it made me wonder, Millie, should we put these first on our agenda? Should we try that as a
good idea.
Let's try that. We have. Yes, exactly. That's right. With emojis next to them. Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire. We have one who's not a licensee. Sewer District Commission, Water District Commission, each have 2 alternate positions. Transportation Safety Committee, Building Committee for Public Safety Complex, we need 1 public member. And the Conservation Commission, 1 position. If you're still paying attention to this meeting, make note that in the town manager's report, she talks about the fact that there is an ongoing, this is something that Martha has really advocated, I think. There is a real deep dive on Conservation Commission and what their authorities are, what we should, frankly, we should be doing more there, I think, is there may, I think it's fair to say that that's a consensus. So if you want to get in on a board that's likely to be interesting and perhaps even more dynamic, it's a great opportunity. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
No move.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Yes. Yes, I should say that. Yes. Open your present from the council.